live. Okay. Oh boy, Streamlabs, why? So Streamlabs apparently gave us an update that did all of the bad things, literally all of the bad things. Um, I'm hoping that the stream has a title and a description because apparently all of the bad things.
Oh my god, my aspect ratio was off.
Um, so yeah, no, I was
I'm
trying to
gonna
hit.
start streaming.
Are you able to hear me still?
Yeah. But
Okay, cool.
my aspect ratio is off, and that triggers me.
Oh. Remember, this is the reason why
Help!
this is the only time we're using Discord for
Yeah, we're
this.
not using Discord again, man. Like we're trying to be cheap over here. Can't be cheap.
Nah, we have to
I'm
we
just
have,
sitting
we have to pay
here.
for the program.
I look like a squished version of my face.
Not to mention
Which,
we can't see each other, which hurts. And
yeah.
it certainly doesn't help considering there's that weird fanfic of us floating around on the internet now.
Yep. And the chat is going like, "Hey, ocean keeps freezing."
Yes.
You know what? That's gonna be a thing, unfortunately,
That's going to be a
because
thing for
Discord
today's episode.
is fucking evil.
So,
I thought that Discord would be great for this. Do we want to try Skype?
no, because we already tried
No.
Skype that one time and remembered that it makes us
Oh
go into vertical video
yeah,
mode. No.
that was a fucking mess.
Yes, it was. So for context,
It's got to be Zoom.
the reason that we are having to cheap out on Zoom right now is because one of the paychecks that I'm supposed to be receiving did not come in. It was supposed to come in on the 1st. It is currently the 7th, and that was the paycheck that was going to pay our Zoom subscription. So yeah, here we are. We're in this. Also, just so you guys know, super chats don't come in as like revenue until the 21st of the next month. So if you try to do that and saying, "Oh, we'll get the stream live," it's okay. I'll send a $20 super chat. I'm never going to see that until like way later. So I appreciate the thought that goes into something like that, but I also need to let you guys know that it's not going to do a whole lot, all things considered, in this particular situation. So yeah, that's the circumstances we're dealing with. How's your day, Ocean? Since mine's
Ah!
issues.
Ah! I might just do this.
just do that. Oh, that looks even worse.
Oh,
that
does
looks,
it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait till I see it on the live stream.
Oh,
Let's see how fucked this looks.
it's
Oh, it
going-
looks terrible.
Yeah, it looks awful.
It looks absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, let's not.
I'm gonna not do that.
Yeah, let's not do that. That looked
So much for that.
everything.
I had an
about that
idea.
was bad.
Okay, so guys, we're this wonderful, like, show with all the advancements of technology.
Every episode besides this one looked pretty.
It's not. Oh, none of them do.
God damn it.
None of them do.
My hammer's over there.
Oh.
I can't get it. Dang it.
So anyway, my day's been weird. I've been dealing with crap. So, and I've heard that you've been dealing with crap, and technology has just hated us this entire fucking time. What are we? Oh my god. Are you getting hit with hammers?
Pam got me my hammer, but it came through the air.
Good catch, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm on a visual delay because I'm watching the YouTube video.
Yeah, no, we need to be able to see each other.
This is the. This is the most low. Wait, what are we doing? Okay. I feel like I'm on a phone call, but I've just got it's not a 3, 4, 5 second delay watching the stream.
Why would you throw that at me?
There's a lot of throwing and screaming going on.
There is. She just threw duck sauce at me.
So what the fuck did we do? We have a topic roulette 10K special. Our 10K special is the most low grade possible technological thing that we could possibly fucking do.
Yeah.
Why the fuck is this what we're doing? I don't know.
We're having the 10K special at the same time that like literally everything's broken.
Everything is broken. It's a mess over here, but we're here for you guys. So, we do want to get some topics thrown up into the chat of what you guys want to hear us banter about, or yell at each other about. It's always interesting if somebody can figure out a place where me and Cirrus are going to disagree on, and then we can yell at each other. But otherwise, we tend to be pretty chill on like most topics, which is somewhat annoying because every once in a while I want to hit this guy in the head, but I agree with him so much, and he's so goddamn lovable, pissing me off.
Well, I'm sorry for pissing you off so much for being so lovable. I'm sure
I'm
Pam.
so
I'm sure.
angry with how goddamn agreeable you are.
I think Pam feels
This
the
is
same way sometimes. Just angry that I'm agreeable.
Yeah, quit being reasonable. Just be unreasonable once so I can be justified in being mad at you.
By the way, a little short announcement for everybody. This is the one thing, the one technical flashy thing we'll be able to do without things breaking on us. I hope. Because if it does, I'm going to be really upset. So there is one thing linked in the description, assuming that Streamlabs did not break it. Recently, for those of you who don't know, the Godless Iowan got into a car crash, and the car got totaled, so his insurance is more than likely not going to cover it. And even if it does, once you've totaled a car, repairing it back up to full doesn't. It's never going to.
Oh, it never works the same.
Yeah, it's never going to work the same.
Yeah.
And we know that we've got conventions and stuff coming up. So even if it did get repaired from the ground up, it still would not be able to make it to literally any forum or convention or anything like that.
It's not going to be a road trip car after any repair.
It's fudged.
Wrecks like that, the engine gets dinged some little fucking wear, and you wind up breaking down halfway on your road trip. It's just a terrible idea to do that. So we need to work out. Godless Iowan needs wheels, and we're trying to raise some money to help him out.
There's a fundraiser in the description, and I have it flashed up on the screen right now as well. Currently, $300 has been donated to the $5,000 goal of getting him a new and functional vehicle. If any of you have ever bought a car before, you know that like every $1,000 bracket of used car is like marginally more functional than the last.
So much better each time.
So yeah, currently he has a secondary vehicle. Maybe I remember when I went there, he had a secondary vehicle that wasn't working, so like he's trying to get that one up and running, but it's a van that's not exactly that great either. So this is like, none of this is good,
honestly. I'm gonna send you a message.
Are you gonna send me a message?
Yeah.
Question is, where are you sending this message?
Discord.
So that could possibly.
That's a possibility.
We would have to figure out a way to get it up to him.
Well, I could drive it.
Probably just like we'd have to get the brakes and stuff replaced on my vehicle. But that is an option. We can run.
I drive my car. You follow me in that one.
And we can just figure it out from there.
Road trip back and do a hammered out podcast from the car.
do a hammered out podcast from the car.
So for those of mysteriousness that we're talking about, I do have a car that I'm selling for cheap.
But we are 15 hours away from Godless Iowan.
Right, but it needs like a quick repair. But if it has that quick repair, it is a road trip worthy solid vehicle. It's a Toyota 4Runner. Which is something that I was thinking about keeping as a beater truck, but at the same time, it may not be too bad.
If we're in this situation,
could be a thing.
Yeah, worst case scenario, if somehow we do hit the $5,000 goal on his fundraiser, which is linked down below in the description,
then the guy can just buy a new car.
He could just buy a new car, but some of that could also be used for repairing the 4Runner and getting it in tip-top shape and sent up there.
Of course,
because
that could definitely be done.
Because unlike the vehicle that he has, it's not a totaled car.
And the 4Runner that I've got is a Toyota, and that thing's going to last for another 200,000 miles if you let it. So, it's a little banged up, but it's a good fucking car. So we'll see.
Here in a few hours, Iowan should be getting off of work. So how about we do a thing?
We could do a thing.
We can definitely talk to him and let him know that, hey, this is an option we might be able to do, depending.
Yeah, it's up to him.
Depending on what fundraisers up there. That's just an option that just came to our heads, like literally, or came to Ocean's head
as we were
doing this.
Because I don't want to junk that car because it's still wheels. It's still a good vehicle. It could be good for somebody. I know. So we'll poke around. We'll see. We'll see what Iwan thinks. It might be that we wind up getting a car over to him. So
Yep. Hello, I'm
we'll see how it
Orange.
goes.
Hello, I'm Orange said, does he not have insurance on the car? He does have insurance. The problem is, though, is that once you've totaled your car, there are a lot of circumstances where the insurance just will not pay out.
Right.
And that's what he's facing right now. So, yes, there's insurance on the vehicle, but like right now, the vehicle
Do
that
we
we
know
have,
whether or not insurance has denied him?
we'll probably figure that out here in the next 2 or 3 hours whenever we get a chance
Okay.
to speak with him directly.
Cool.
Um, but the actual like fundraiser push isn't going to be until tomorrow, which is the other side of my 10K special. We're going to be doing a Q&A, and some of that's going to be for that situation there to make sure that we can get him a functional vehicle that's not dead.
Indeed.
Yeah, Ronald Popple says insurance always tries to weasel out of paying what they owe. Yeah, it's true.
Dude, it's crazy. Like you'll sit there and get like what you think is a good coverage, and then all of a sudden when it comes time for them to pay up, they're like, well, you fucked up this one thing, you fucked up this other thing, and we're not going to pay out. It's like, it's almost as if you need to, like, when I got insurance for, I got a new vehicle recently, and I sat down with insurance, and I went through like several potential situations with them and looked over. I had to look over things really closely in order to make sure that everything was correct, because it's like um, totaling a car and the value of the car and what they're, it's there's all kinds of like loopholes for them to try and get out of. And I think I closed up all the holes in meeting with them. I went there in person rather than doing it over the phone. Um, but it's a little bit, there's like a lot of hurdles you have to jump, especially if you get minimal coverage. Like oftentimes you won't get covered if something happens.
Oh, if you've got
It's
minimal
frustrating.
coverage, then it only, like here in Georgia at least, the minimal coverage doesn't cover anything for your vehicle. It's only the things that
Right.
you might damage.
Right.
And even then, like when I had a vehicle, it was one of the first vehicles I ever had. I spun out on the road because I didn't know what overcorrecting was, and that it was a problem. So ended up spinning out. I ended up spinning out on the road and crashing backwards 60 miles an hour into a median guardrail between Cartersville and Ackworth. And when I did that, a bunch of like dirt and rocks and stuff flew from where my vehicle was plowing into the dirt, and it hit the side of another vehicle and scuffed it up a little bit. So of course, after being vehicleless and dealing with all that shit, I had a lovely letter in the mail saying that I needed to pay a good $300-400 to the insurance company of the other people's vehicle because of the scuff marks from the spin out. Yeah, yeah, no, that was an interesting scenario. So yeah,
Quite sure how that works.
yeah, I don't know how it works. I just know that that's
I
the letter I
I feel
got.
like I've jumped into like the insurance world trying to understand about as much of it as possible, and I feel like that I know more than the average Joe about it. But I still come across these situations in which like how that gets interpreted in the insurance world is just a mystery to me.
I'm
Like I'm
better.
by no means a fucking expert, obviously. I'm just like a layman that's wound up having to read a lot because I'm trying to buy insurance. And then it was like, what is,
I'm
um
I'm better at health
it's just a
insurance.
mess.
I'm no good at car
Uh,
insurance, but I have had to take classes on health insurance because I used to be a supplementary insurance salesman. So,
Comment that's been thrown out in the chat is that any business, what was it, any business that makes its money off of the pain and suffering of others is immoral, which would be insurance companies, right?
yeah, it's a bit of a two-sided coin. Yeah, it's a bit of a two-sided coin with insurance companies though, because there's the one side of it where there is making money off the pain and suffering of others, but there's the fact that the service that they sell is supposed to be gotcha. The service that they sell is supposed to be alleviation of pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
You find this in vehicle and medical insurance. Now, granted, when it comes to the vehicle insurance, I'm okay with that being the case. When it comes to medical insurance, I kind of think that medical insurance should all be supplementary and everything else should be single payer. But maybe that's just the evil socialism talking.
As another person has brought up that insurance is just privatized socialization, which I agree with.
Yeah, it is.
Like
There are some
it's
systems that are
space.
okay for it though.
Right, I think that socialization through a government system would be better than just like than an
Well, then
insurance system because an insurance system, it's essentially the same thing. I'm not quite sure what the difference is between
the only difference
a private
is
insurance and a single payer system.
the only difference is that with
Except that
a
it's less money.
with a single payer system, it's less because you'll get charged based on your income as opposed to their flat rate.
Right.
Which, yeah,
As opposed to your coverage.
I kind of like the system that Canada has with it, where basically all medical insurance is supplementary. So like you're for the most part you're covered when you go into the when you go in to get treated for anything. But if you have medical insurance, then it can end up helping. Like for instance, what Aflac would do is they would give you a paycheck personally if you went in to go and take care of anything insurance wise. They would send you a paycheck. So if you were out of work for a certain amount of time, they would basically pay your bills for the time that you were out of work because you were in the hospital.
Right.
I actually like that system a lot because I know a lot of people who without that would literally have been screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that dental is considered a supplementary thing in Canada as well, where like it's not one of the things that's just covered under their single payer for the most part. A lot of the times you do have to get that through insurance.
Okay, so we have um some people commenting in the chat again. Uh, it's my friend Lettuce. Uh, linear. God damn it! These are words that I'm gonna hard to pronounce. Linearity or circularity of time, and how it interacts with the primordial state of mythic time. Sirs, you want to have some thoughts on that one?
Oh boy, that's the so
There
we're
was
just
a big fucking smiley face at the end of that one.
so we're just starting with that. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea. No,
Uh,
I'm. This is one that I know the guy that suggests this. His username is usurp lettuce, and I'm like, oh, I know who you are, you bastard. He's a It's this really smart heathen that has a blog called of Axe and Plow. Go check it out. Um, that he writes like um essentially 400 class level blogs on polytheism and heathenry. Really smart dude. Uh, love listening to him talk. Love reading his articles. But he's definitely like
like up here.
like he's thinking about stuff like on an echelon that's definitely beyond where at least we get into it in like the YouTube debate circle.
Oh yeah.
It's not like because in uh debate conversations when it's getting like polytheist versus Christian or atheist or something like that, nobody asks about this stuff. Everybody's familiar with Christianity and a lot of the subtle topics over there, like transubstantiation or something like that. But when you get into some of the heathen concepts that have a similar sort of like tradition specific aspect, nobody asks about them. I don't get Christians challenging me on circularity of time, or so.
We do have a very quick and easy one from Brian Stevens. Is deism more rational than monotheism? I think both of us would agree that that's definitely the case.
Simply because it makes less claims.
It makes less claims, and Occam's razor can attack it and cut it down to there might be a god, and that basically just gets you to the deistic claim.
Right. I think that um which there was somebody that was this is a good logic question of which one is more likely. God is real and it's raining outside, or rather God is real and the sky is blue, or God is real. Um and the one that's more likely is God is real because it makes less claims um than God is real and the sky is blue, regardless of whether or not the sky is blue is like a readily apparent fact.
Well, not to
Um,
mention, you can even take the readily apparent fact. Uh, the sky is blue is a claim in and of itself, not just because it's adding an extra claim to the position, but also because you have to get into definitions of blue. You have to get into definitions of color, whether or not they're real, past just being wavelengths. That question actually has some really awkwardly complicated answers and implications past just is the sky the color it seems to be.
Yeah, even no, it's just starting to question the readily apparent fact, of course.
Well,
So
you can question readily apparent facts. It appears to me that my finger is making contact with this wooden desk, but I understand that
I
tech.
understand that it's not,
I understand that it's not. So even that readily apparent fact is still in question. It's still debatable.
but it's coming into contact under the. Oh boy, here we go. Under um the perception of what we mean by contact, under the perception of contact. That is happening. But whether or not the two things are actually touching when it comes to like the atoms actually rubbing against each other, no, that's not happening. There is empty space in between them. So, fuck. But
Yes,
uh,
but that's why adding the extra claim becomes problematic, because as soon as you've added that extra claim, there's sub implications to that claim
let's see.
over and above it just being an extra claim.
I got a question specifically for me um in the chat. It says, Ocean, a lot of your views seem to stem from from chaos as a concept. Can you explain this, or is it something Norse related? No, it's not Norse related. It's Greek related. But it's not a position that I hold directly. It's a position that I will throw out as an example. Um, so I've said in the past that I do hold to the chaos concept. I've changed that fairly recently. Whereas um, I think there's several legends within polytheism as far as like the origin of the universe, and maybe you can comment on this, sir. It might be a spot where we disagree. But I think that the Norse idea, the Egyptian idea, and the Greek idea of chaos. Um, there's the Norse idea of Yggdrasil, the Greek idea of chaos, and then the Egyptian idea of Nu and manipulating material that was already there. That covers a lot of bases when it comes to what the what we mean by prime mover.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with chaos, you have kind of an automatic prime mover that isn't an agent; it just creates. With
Chaos just is.
Right, chaos
Is
just is. Chaos
chaos
came to
is
be randomly because it is random.
chaos is
Um,
by its very nature, therefore it is. That's it sounds
right,
circular, but that's literally what chaos is.
unless it wasn't.
Yeah,
And
it could not be because
because
it's chaos.
it's described as coming into existence in Hesiod, which is what Mike Winger was pointing out in the debate with the three of us, trying to set it up as a gotcha, but it didn't matter.
Mike Winger trying to set up a gotcha. Oh man, that's
Gasp.
I know, right? Strange.
First going after, but anyway, um, so, but this is like so. To try and get back into explaining it, Yggdrasil is material, the pre-existing material forming more material, which then comes into the gods and then generates universes. And then Nu is a prime mover interacting with pre-existing material that then creates universes.
Nu sounds very like that sounds the closest to what we understand to be the Big Bang Theory, where you have primary. So with the Big Bang Theory or the I kind of hate this because I understand that the Big Bang Theory.
Honestly, the Norse is closest to the Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory, because Nu is an external prime mover interacting with the material, whereas in the Norse understanding, the material just pops and then there's a bang of sorts. But then
But was the material always there?
Yes.
Okay, then yeah, that is close then, because the theory of universal expansion is just that everything was condensed and then it wasn't.
Right.
There was a period of inflation and then a period of expansion. The period of inflation lasts for like a handful of microseconds.
But a lot of this stuff, and how I would interpret it, and this is not, I mean, pagans interpret this stuff differently among each other, but I would interpret that myth as being external to the universe, so being the origin of all universes, with Yggdrasil being the tree that is from which all other universes grow off of. The base at the bottom of the megaverse. That's where I would put it, rather than saying that it's a Big Bang explainer. It would be something that is before the Big Bang. But it's again, here's the point when it comes down to like a lot of these creation stories within polytheism. None of them fucking matter when it comes to spirituality. They're not they're ideas to discuss, and some of them have coherencies with scientific discovery, but that doesn't mean that they're true. It doesn't mean that they're not true. And it doesn't mean that the point of them is to discuss scientific inquiry. The point
And
of them is more uh, a discussion of where we come from in our relation to the gods. It's not supposed to be um, a scientific claim, in my opinion. So
I would say that there's a fundamental difference between the way that polytheism posits something and the way that a Christian would posit something with the Bible post hoc. So
mhm,
with a polytheist framework, it's going to be something more along the lines of, we think it might be something like this, and this is our lore behind it, and that's pretty much where it
right,
stops. That's where it stops. With the Bible, however, what you typically get is if something seems to line up even vaguely, which is the same case that it would be for the polytheism lore framework. If it seems to line up vaguely with what we understand scientifically, they'll say, "See, the Bible was right all along." It turns into a gotcha,
yeah.
which is
Um,
not the same thing as what's happening here.
what I'll say with what polytheists tend to be more concerned about is direct spirituality of the discussion of our experiences, and the discussion of spirituality as we interpret those experiences. Um, so when people have spiritual experiences and they're giving credence to that, to like an external of some kind, um, and we put that in line with our traditions of interpreting that as gods or land spirits or whatever, that's the more important part of polytheism. When it comes to what the creation story is, there's differences, and it only matters in its relation to the rest of it as far as uh, meaning is concerned. But and this is where Christians wind up getting into a bit of a tizzle, because they believe that if you don't have an intelligent designer creator, then meaning winds up getting lost somewhere. And that tends to be their big contention with it. Is they're like, if there's no described meaning from an intelligent starting point, then everything is therefore meaningless, and all meaning that is constructed is non-objective. Which I haven't been able to make that click and understand why meaning needs to originate with like an intelligent creator rather than anything after that in order for it to be valuable.
Yeah,
I think it's honestly more valuable if it originates afterwards.
I've never
So
understood that either, because for me, it's always been the case that if there are agents to construct meaning, then meaning exists, and that's it.
right,
Um,
meaning exists even like in an atheistic framework. You can have meaning exist and it just be just as valuable as any polytheist or any Christian.
we do have
That
a
it matters to me.
we do have a super chat from Chris Foster. It says, two of my favorite people on YouTube. And I do thank you very much
Sweet.
for that super chat. That's awesome. That said, though, if anybody else is looking to donate any money today, right now for this episode, there is a link below for Godless Iowans car fund.
Yes, let's help Godless Ivan get his vehicle.
That's a lot more important to me right now than a super chat to me. Like, this might be part of my 10K special for today and tomorrow, but on both of
But
these,
we're gifting it to
I would
Godless Iowa.
request that none of the money that I get in super chat happen. I wish that that would just go to his fund because he needs it right now. I can cover my bills once my paychecks come in, even though they're like really fucking late. Once those come in, I can cover my bills. Right now, he's in the hole. So, and I'm going to go ahead and we got a so far. $20 has been donated to him as of starting the stream by Mark Caesar, and another
Sweet.
$5 has been donated to him by an anonymous user. So, and I have that up on the screen for anybody to see. So that is awesome. Thank you guys for donating to him so far, and we will continue as we are. I will keep on periodically checking in there to see how we're doing.
Uh, pure
Pure extension.
ostenison. Pure ostension. Ostenison. My cat is about to screw. Um,
Said, who are the trickster gods?
I have a blackout um curtain behind me, and my cat has decided that he wants to get behind it.
Good.
So I might there might be beams of light coming out from behind me, and it's not because I'm the chosen Messiah. It's because my cat has found its way.
That's okay. Those beams of light aren't as cringy as the multiple anime posters behind me that are here for this, theological philosophical discussion.
Damn it. Uh, there you go. That's pretty cringy. So anyway, but
I
he
like
asked a
it that
question
way.
about who are the trickster gods, and there's a lot of them.
Not Loki, technically.
Well, Loki is kind of a trickster god, but he's an exception among them. Uh, there he goes.
The cat is just doing the catto
Yeah.
things.
Cat's he's doing his cat thing. Now he's back there. Anyway, so uh, trickster god for people to look up to really get trickster gods and what they're usually about would not be Loki. I would suggest looking
Odin.
up a trickster. Well, Odin can be considered one, so can Hermes. But one that's really awesome to look up is one called Anansi. Are you familiar with Anansi?
I'm not familiar with Anansi.
Anansi is an African deity associated with the spider, and it is also the origin point of a lot of the Brer Rabbit stories.
Ah.
And there are you can find some publications that have in them all of the oral retellings about Anansi that show up in Jamaica. Um, there's a lot of stories involving like Anansi trying to keep all the knowledge of the world inside of a ceramic pot and trying to hide it into a tree. And he can't get it into the tree because he doesn't have the wisdom or the knowledge of how to put it in the tree because it's in the fucking pot. So but the trickster, the differentiation between trickster deities on the point of Loki and on ones like Anansi is Anansi's trickstery tends to be to work out to people's favor. And sometimes he's a little selfish about it, but it's in a way that benefits other people around him as well. With Loki, it's to other people's detriment regularly. And sometimes he fixes a problem that he creates, but he's not. In the narrative, he tends to be more of a
not a
malicious
benevolent
entity.
lord.
He's not benevolent to humans, especially. He seems to be malevolent to humans. Or his interests in humans seems to be that they should fail. So there's a lot of there's a lot of controversy about Loki. If you go within the heathen community, you can see a lot of people defending Loki. You can see a lot of discussion about how Loki is, as Zarkonian Gamer is pointing out in the chat, that Loki is misunderstood, and there's a lot of that. My position on Loki is that he's ahistorical. There's no evidence of worship of him. There's no evidence of place names relating to him. There seems to be.
Didn't he seem to
It's
be
hard to talk about off the cuff.
Didn't he
He
seem
seems
to
to be
be
a
kind of like
creation.
a Christian
Yeah.
creation though?
Yes, he does seem to be a Christian creation. He pops up in the Eddas, and that's the earliest that we know of him. He does not show up in any other Germanic lore. Like, he doesn't show up in Anglo-Saxon texts on the same subjects. There is one mention of a Loki in Anglo-Saxon lore, but it does seem to be describing a Jotun rather than a god. It's just because there's a king that commits himself to Loki, and through the process of the story, he winds up finding out that Loki is actually a very malevolent deity that does not have humanity's best interest at heart. And the conclusion of the story is that this king is crestfallen at that he's managed to oath himself to a malevolent entity.
We do have another question from Sengeto. I believe that's how you pronounce that. He's in both of our he's in both of our Discord servers. Mm-hmm. Are there any
Celtic pagan?
Are there any polytheistic traditions that you have an issue with comparable to your issue with Christianity? I don't want to name them by name, but there is one that comes to mind. I think Ocean knows exactly which one's coming.
You're talking about folkists?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you get
anything white supremacy flavored. I'm not a fan of, and that's
right. And it's not just like you get. That's obviously reprehensible because it's white supremacy. You also get into like where I criticize Christians a lot on a lot of their ideas, especially when it comes to hell, things like that, is that it doesn't have philosophical rigor to it either. I'd get frustrated with focused, in addition to the racism issue, to how they can't um, even philosophically demonstrate it either. They have to apply some kind of limitation on the gods in order for them to be race based. Like they need to that. For example, um, if you have somebody that's Asian that wants to worship Thor, folkists will say that because your blood is not of European or Norse descent, um, then Thor cannot communicate with you or something like that. And some of them have this position of being an atheopagan and actually just saying that it's an ethnic religion. And others, there's a guy named, I don't want to drop names, but there's a pagan in Sweden that has this position where he's very atheopagan and he says it's an ethnic religion. And the gods don't exist.
But
With
if it's an ethnic religion and the gods don't exist because that is a stance of atheopaganism, wouldn't it then stand that there's no real basis to ethnicize it?
He tries to adopt an identity approach to it, saying that it's just like a white person can't follow Native American traditions. Somebody that's not of European descent can't follow.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Also, says that it sounds like I'm really quiet. Let me see if I can fix that. Possibly this will fix it.
There you go. You're turned up.
Did that fix it?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
And for me, it did. But I'm not referring to the Golden One. I'm referring to Thulian Perspective, but the Golden One is another guy that's like that. Golden One and Thulian are both this type of thing. I'm not sure if Golden One's a theist or not. But if we're gonna get into some of their names, yeah, there's Golden One and Thulian Perspective are the two big like Norse pagan YouTubers that have this kind of opinion.
Well, the wonderful thing about opinions, I'm of the opinion that the person that posited that opinions can't be wrong or right managed to have the first wrong opinion.
If you want to check out a good criticism of the Golden One, ContraPoints has like 2 or 3 videos on him that are hilarious. One pointing out the alpha male thing, and another one talking about white supremacy that feature the Golden One all over it. And if you want to learn about the Golden One, I don't suggest necessarily going to his page just because that gives him support, but go to ContraPoint's page and look at her videos on him because they're amazing and they're hilarious. And so much more entertaining than watching a Golden One video.
Ronald Popple says, how is being polytheistic any different than being a comic fanboy? I'd like to posit that any belief, any strongly held belief, is going to be functionally no different than any other one because it's going to depend on how much you let it shape your life. So, for instance,
do you believe the superheroes exist?
That would be one of the big differences.
That's a huge difference. I've brought up, so when I bring up the superhero thing, I bring it up against atheopagans like Frank and Russ. That they're cool people, but then at the same time I'm like, so what is the distinguishing factor between this and somebody who really, really likes Marvel? And because they view the gods as literary devices that are important to mankind and so on. It's like, well, don't these things show up in Marvel? Isn't this the same thing if someone's just a really big Marvel fanboy? And both of them seem to bite the bullet on that and say, yeah, there's not really much of a difference. I would say that there is a huge difference because we believe that the gods have some kind of effect on our lives. So
that'd be a big difference. But I know that there's, like, for instance, I know that there are people that would not exercise, but a lot of those people who grew up with something like Dragon Ball Z gained a motivation to exercise and better themselves because that was a central motif of that story. Right. And there's where you get your value in a literary device. So a lot of it boils down to whether or not you believe that the subject in question exists, and the other part is how much of that experience of that literature. This is the point for the atheopagans. How much of that experience in literature do you let affect your life? Do you just view it as an interesting story and that's it, or do you actually like juxtapose yourself to the characters in the story and try to mold yourself to any of them or any of their values?
I was distracted because I'm having technical issues all of a sudden.
Oh boy,
everything's breaking down over here. But I've got the chat back up and running, so that's good.
Awesome.
I can see things.
And then we had another question earlier up. This was for you, Ocean. What is an example of a personal experience with a deity, and how does this personal experience justify deity belief?
So, as far as the relationship between the two, I mean, there's several descriptions of personal experiences. It usually has to do with the feeling of an overwhelming presence of something that seems to be external to you. And then there's a relationship between that experience and a situation that you might be in or something along those lines. A lot of them are very personal stories. I've gone into them before, but I'm not going to do it like just off the cuff right now. As far as how that relates to justification, it's a justification based on a concept of seemings. That you've had this experience, there's a seeming that it is external to you because it wasn't something that you brought on, it wasn't something that was inspired by any particular environmental factor, at least it doesn't seem that way. And you're trusting that experience as being an external entity of sorts that took an interest in you in that moment. There is some questions of leap when it comes to justification in going to a specific tradition and saying, hey, this is Thor. But you would want to make the associations by looking at Thor's character and seeing if that's consistent with the experience that you had. And that's how you would make that justification. With the philosophical concepts, though, what you would want to do, Cicero puts forward that it does seem to be intuitive, that we believe in the gods. There does seem to be people that have these experiences that are otherwise mentally stable. So it's not a fluke, and it's not something that's brought on by insanity. So we wind up positing the gods as an explainer for this, and then moving forward with explanation or with exploration with that positing. Now, a lot of atheists will come at you and be like, well, that's you don't have certainty in that. Fine.
Yeah, but it doesn't. But it's not the same thing as Christianity, where Christianity requires faith with a level of certainty. With something like polytheism, it's not necessarily the same thing. It's not
right. It's very different from what Christians do.
Certainty isn't really a requirement. Just like, for instance, I'm not certain that gods don't exist. I lean. This is why I take the claim of atheism. I lean that they don't. I lean towards that side, but it doesn't mean that I dismiss the possibility completely.
Right, and I've compared it to belief that the physical world exists. That if you want to try and say that the physical world exists, you wind up running into a lot of the same problems. You're basing it on experience. You're basing it on seemings. You're making the leap that your experience of the physical world is has a direct relationship with what you're interacting with the fact of the matter. So the same thing happens with spiritual experiences. You wind up making that assumption that what is seeming to be true is what is true, and then making the exploration through that. Usurp Lettuce is pointing out that, hey, there's the simple fact that theophanic, he uses those words, events are inherently very subjective, and that's definitely true. That's the reason why we have multiple traditions. And you could say that the relationship between experience and the physical world is the reason why we have different approaches to whether or not the world exists. Because we have idealism, we have realism, we have dualism. We have all these ideas that are consistent, but require a lot of the same leaps. And my cat
that keeps on pulling that out.
You see it, right?
Yes, I do.
This little dude.
I do see that is a thing that is happening. We also have 2 more donations, one from Jordan and one from Chris Foster, that have gone into Godless Iowans Fund as well. Just wanted to go ahead and point out that those
Letting us
happen and
know
they're awesome.
I hate him. Drag Worker says he's sorry about the personal experience aspect. I mean, to get a touchy area. It's not. It's a touchy area only because here's what happens when you have these conversations, especially with atheists. Is it happens with Christians too, which there's an argument that Christians are atheists, but that's neither here nor there. There's a guy on Twitter that's been doing that with Christians, just calling them atheists, and he's a polytheist, and it's been pretty hilarious to watch. I've been joining in, but what happens when you talk to an atheist about personal experiences is they wind up trying to dismiss them in every possible way that they can, and say that no, you can explain that same experience through naturalistic means. And the strategy that I've often taken with having that debate is to just say, yes, you can explain it through naturalistic means. You can also explain it through polytheistic means. There's also ways that Christians can explain the same experiences. That doesn't mean that just because you can explain it in some other way doesn't mean that that some other way is the fact of the matter. We're still in this other situation of like, well, we're looking at everything based on seemings. Therefore, whatever your preference is your preference as far as like how you're looking at it. You may have your reasons for believing that things work this particular way, but that doesn't mean that that's the fact of the matter. So there's a lot of disagreements over what the fact of the matter is. Polytheists hold one position, atheists hold another, Christians hold yet another. And then there's several other positions even beyond that are incompatible with those three.
I think we just got another point.
Of the matter.
I think we just got another point into the reasons why this is the only time we'll be using Discord for this.
What's that?
Because a good chunk of that came out to sound kind of like you were like this, and then is it?
No.
Yep.
No. Oh well.
Isn't it wonderful? Isn't technology great?
Anyway, point is, there's a lot of different ways to look at justifying things, and even if all of them are logically consistent, doesn't necessarily mean that any of them are the fact of the matter. It could be that every single one of them is damn wrong.
Yeah. That's kind of what we got into with when we were talking with Modern Day Debate on here, and why he was like, well, when he was like, well, why are you okay with biting the bullet on all of those? And I'm just like, well, because I play card games. I understand that the fact that something has a minimal chance doesn't mean that the fact of the matter will always be elsewise.
So we just got this is generally what comes up in a conversation with atheists, is something Mark J6700 points out in the chat. Reliable reasons for positions are evidence-based and not faith-based. What are your thoughts on that?
The first issue is you'd have to figure out what your definition of faith is. So there's a definition that a lot of atheists tend to hold theists to, and usually the theists are Christians, and it's by going with the definition of faith found in Hebrews, the confidence in things not seen type of deal. Then there's some theists that will use faith and say that, well, it's just confidence. They'll just conflate it with confidence. So the first issue that I have with that is that I don't have a good working definition for faith here, because it seems like such a fluid idea that changes person to person.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be my first issue. Depending on what definition of faith he's using, I might agree with him, but it really depends on that definition.
With what he's saying as far as evidence-based, is a philosophical argument evidence?
Well, you have to. A philosophical argument is evidence. It's just whether or not you consider it.
At which point?
Yeah, it's whether or not you consider that argument. What's the word I'm looking for? Convincing. Okay. How much do you weigh that evidence?
Right. So if you have somebody who has a philosophical argument for polytheism, is that a belief that is then evidence-based?
Technically, it is.
Right. So
it just might not be good evidence.
It might be evidence that someone disagrees with. If it has the same kind of veracity as a naturalistic position.
Okay. Mark clarified that in the case that he's positing, faith is not evidence-based. So basically, if I was just saying that,
right, but then we get into what's evidence. So
yeah, then you have the question of what's evidence. If you accept, so this is the funny thing. is that you can accept that the only evidence that you can find is whatchamacallit. You can accept that the only evidence that you will accept in a situation is going to be based on experience, not experience. What's empiricism? Is going to be empirical. But even then, as soon as you get into empiricism, as soon as you get into empiricism, either empiricism has to justify itself somehow, which becomes one, circular, and B, really nightmarishly problematic, because
especially if you're trying to say that someone shouldn't believe in God because it's circular.
Yeah,
like they get into this with Christians a lot, where atheists and Christians will start arguing over God is just a base assumption, it seems, and presuppositionalists will bite the bullet on this. And then you get into where presuppositionalists will get atheists into a little bit of a corner when they start asking them how they justify empiricism. And if their whole thing is that something must have physical evidence before you can believe in it, and how you justify physical evidence becomes a bit of a nightmare for somebody who's trying to fight against that. And because you wind up having the same kind of you have to take certain axioms and you wind up with the same kind of circular. And if you're trying to say that things are bad to believe in because of it being based on an assumed axiom, well, you're doing the same thing.
Isn't that basically just goalpost moving at that point?
What do you mean?
So if you're just basing it on, if you're just positing an axiom that it's going to be based on, you've just moved the goalpost to whatever that axiom is for your justification.
Are you saying it's goalpost moving for who? For the Christian or for the atheist?
It can be both.
Right, I think so too. So there's a lot of banding around with that. I did have somebody ask, to what extent can polytheism coexist with naturalism? Depends on the naturalist. Cyrus, you're a naturalist, right?
Methodologically.
Yes, and we get along, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that to
that extent it can.
It coincides. So like I'm a methodological naturalist because I'm a pragmatist. Because I don't find philosophical naturalism useful, but I find methodological naturalism useful because it literally has only to do with the doing.
Right.
Like by its very definition, it's just how you function in the world. For instance, a philosophical naturalist.
It winds up at the base point dismissing any sort of spiritual explainer.
It dismisses the spiritual explainer, but it doesn't say that it doesn't, with methodological naturalism, it doesn't say that it couldn't be the case. Philosophical naturalism would posit it. Philosophical naturalism would say that it couldn't be the case. It could never be the case that a god was a first cause, as an example. Methodological naturalism can say it could be the case that a god is a first cause, but that may or may not be useful as an explainer, or it may just bring up more questions.
Yeah, it does. It's different when you're talking about usefulness as an explainer, especially if your goal is scientific inquiry.
36 says, can we possibly explain naturalist? Naturalist is, it's actually really simple.
The part of naturalist that people get frustrated with, that winds up, it's not nudist colonies.
No, it could be. There could be naturalist nudists.
The part that gets to be controversial is when people say that, the naturalist makes the assumption that God doesn't exist, which is true. It's also, it's true because with naturalistic methods, you don't wind up getting into what people are talking about when they're talking about spirituality. You're talking about a physical world. So the naturalist operates under the assumption that the physical world is all that exists. There's some philosophical objections to naturalism that don't include gods. Like one big objection that's brought up about naturalism is the belief in numbers. Do numbers exist?
I argue no.
If they don't exist. Right, but if they don't exist, why are they so damn consistent? Why do they work in consistencies in ways that we wind up discovering later, rather than
That's why
starting out with.
I have a very old video on my channel that plays with this idea, and it's called "Is God a Triangle?" I don't know if you've seen it before.
I see where you're going. I like that idea.
Where I've basically posited that that a god, and this was way early on in my channel before we were friends. So this isn't one of those like nobody can take this and say, "Oh, Cirrus changed his position because Ocean's a polytheist and he's trying to appeal to Ocean."
I'm poisoning Cirrus slowly but surely.
But before I was
be a polytheist by the end of the month, guys. Just like that.
Oh God. But no, before me and Ocean were ever even friends. Before this podcast was even a thought, I had a video called "Is God a Triangle?" And in it I basically posited, do triangles exist? And my argument is that they don't. Like, by every fundamental factor, they don't. Shapes do not exist. Mm-hmm. Shapes are abstractions. And this is before I even labeled myself a pragmatist.
Do abstractions exist?
No. They are by their very nature simply abstract.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that they aren't useful. They can be utilized as tools.
If I think of a triangle, does that thought exist?
There is a firing in your brain. That firing exists. It's hard for me to say that a thought exists. Technically, a thought does exist because a thought is data. But the triangle that you're thinking about does not exist.
Does that data contain a triangle?
That data contains
a triangle.
That data contains a thought of a triangle. It's just like a piece of pizza can be in the shape of a triangle. But does that mean a triangle now exists? Simply because
a triangular prism with a piece of pizza. But
simply because an object exists that takes the shape of a triangle, or a thought exists that takes the shape of a triangle, does not make that triangle exist anymore.
Okay. You see where people can argue with it, though, right?
Yes. And then I'm just going to talk about numbers then and ask if you've ever held two.
We got somebody who's a mathematician and a polytheist that says that she agrees with it. Brianna Cross says, as a mathematician and a polytheist, I agree with this. And this is usually the thing that gets really interesting when it comes to conversations with polytheists and atheists, is where a polytheist will take a position and say that numbers exist, which is pretty much the least controversial way of taking the first steps toward justifying God belief from a mathematical sense. And that if you can justify that the number 2 exists in a way that is external to humanity, then
you really are you're just as many steps closer to justifying a God, because it occupies the same space.
Right.
That's actually what I came to in that video as well, as I pointed out that to me it seems that God, or the concept of God, occupies the same space as numbers or as shapes.
Right.
Whether or not it exists.
Shapes are another good example.
Yeah.
It's like, do triangles exist?
It also just happened. It also just happened that when I picked triangle, I didn't even realize that I had just said, "Is God a triangle?" almost like it was a Trinity joke. I never made a single joke about the Trinity.
That's really funny.
Because I didn't. It just went right over my head when I made the video. I was like, "Oh shit, that's a thing I should have said." But to me, all three of those concepts occupy the same space.
But if God is a triangle, then he's not a square, and that means God doesn't exist. God's not omnipotent or omnipresent.
Because he could not be both a triangle and a square at the same time.
He can't be both a triangle.
Thus disproving the Christian God.
Right. That's a really simple. It's a really simple anti-proof to Christianity, but it's stupid. But if you're a mathematician, you're laughing at it.
Yes. I can hold. 36 says I can't hold 2, but I can hold 2 pieces of pizza. I actually used the example of 2 burgers when I made that video.
And that's the thing that a lot of I've had atheists argue with me that 2 does exist physically.
How?
Because they have 2 hamburgers.
No.
Right. I agree with you.
Red does not exist because you have a Coca-Cola can that is colored red. That does not make red exist. In fact, actually, technically, the color of that aluminum isn't even the color of that aluminum. It's the color it's reflecting, and it's not even a color, it's a wavelength. You break down to absurdity. It still does not maintain that.
We have Godless Iowin in the chat saying, hey, everyone.
How's it going, Iowin?
Godless Iowin, we're doing there's a little bit of a fundraiser going on over here.
We've got you up to 385. We started at 300. You were at 300 from Godless Engineer and Reality Revolutions, and we've gotten you moved up to 385. So it's a little bit.
A little bit. We're budging it. We're
trying. We are trying to get you some stuff. But I'm going to pop us back over there so we're not just constantly sitting.
Says, can I turn up my mic? Do I need to turn it up on my end or your end, Cirrus?
Shouldn't be on my end. I'm assuming you meant this link right here.
You can hear me. Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Before originally they were saying that my mic was the low one, so Jack Fisher asked, I can't donate via GoFundMe. How else can I donate? But he did send it to Godless Iowin, so there's that. He'll be able to answer that.
Somebody, Kadama says, FOE says, numbers exist like language, the subjective and abstract, as are the gods, which is a position you could hold. I mean, there's a thing that, like, if you want to have a consistency and say that all of these things are abstract and so on, then that's fine. But in order to hold that position, you would need to have a method for dismissing the experiences of someone who is of an atheistic variant, especially polytheists, because polytheism would explain. Polytheism explains religious diversity. It explains explains reason why we have a myriad of experiences across the world, and it does so at face value without relabeling what's going on. I think that with a lot of other traditions, what you need to do, and I say traditions like Christianity, if you have Christianity, if you're an atheist, you need to relabel those experiences to say that they are something other than what they appear to be, which I think is a tall order. You need to be able to say that someone's experience is not what it seems to be without having access to that experience, and that can be messy.
Which is, yeah, it's very, very hard to do. This is why typically the best justifier we have for experience sometimes is consensus. So if there's 10 people in a room and one person saw something on a wall and the other 9 people who were staring at the same wall didn't see it, then we can usually assume that the one person
sees a wall.
Yeah, the one person that saw something else on the wall didn't actually see something there. But if all 10 people see something on the wall, we can say that it is more likely that there was something on the wall.
But we can't say either way, even if we just have one person who disagrees, because affirming the consensus simply is argument ad populum.
Mm-hmm.
So, shit.
I think this has turned out pretty decent so far. The discussion's been fun.
Yeah, we've had covered a couple of interesting things. I've been writing down some of the questions we've been getting. We've talked about chaos. We've talked about personal experience. We touched on deism versus monotheism. We've talked about a little bit about how polytheism can coexist with naturalism. One thing that I want to add to that is that generally, and I've met a number of polytheists who are mathematicians, who are scientists, and so on, that say there's no crisscross here. There isn't a problem with being a scientist or a computer engineer or software engineer, whatever, however you want to place it, mathematician, scientist, or whatever, and being a polytheist. There doesn't seem to be an issue. In fact, polytheism seems to embrace a lot of these ideas through gods like Apollo or Thoth or Odin that are knowledge pursuit deities, that pursuing these like scientific ideas, wanting to take a rocket into space, etc., is actually a celebration. From the perspective of a polytheist, would be a celebration of those deities.
We have
a celebration of what they want you to do.
We have a super chat from Klaus. Is powered Godman real?
I have no idea what that means.
I don't either. I'm
cool.
That's it. It sounds trolly. And if it's trolly, then that's awesome. And I would
Powered
say that Powered God Man real and disproves that Orange Man bad.
You just turned into an NPC meme. Did you just do that?
Yes, I did.
Did that? Okay.
That's one of my favorite NPC sayings of all time is Orange Man bad. And I agree with it. I think Orange Cheeto Man very bad.
Orange Cheeto Man bad.
You got to add the other adjective, make it redundant. Ugh. We did have
seeing lots of explosions on the Twitters.
We had another question from 36.
Oh,
is there a difference between numbers and quantities?
You know, I'm not a math guy to that extent, so I wouldn't be able to. Like, there's my friend Callan, who's a polytheist and a mathematician, would love those kind of questions.
I would say
I want to have her on at some point. I think that would be to kind of have her discuss the relationship between math and polytheism.
Actually, would really like to have that discussion. My 2 cents on that, though, would be that there is a difference between numbers and quantities simply because the quantity of something is a number.
Oh, I see.
The number can be a quantity, and the quantity of something is a number. But one is going to be descriptive of the other. But they seem to be very closely related.
We talk about. Oh, go ahead.
We do have one more thing from a hashtag heathen. So nothing exists technically. That's interesting.
Uh-oh.
That's okay. So
I mean, if you want to go solipsist on me,
I'm not going to go solipsist on you. But it's hard for me to answer that because I'm a pragmatist. Because if nothing exists, that doesn't matter to me. because considering the world around me, if I consider the world around me as one that doesn't exist, that is not as useful to me as it existing because I have to interact with it.
Let's say that someone proves to you that we're living in a simulation, but that there's no way to get out of it, and there's no way to even figure out what's on the other side. Those are the facts that you have. This world is a simulation. There's no way out of it. There's no way to learn about what's on the other side of it. Does that matter to you as a pragmatist?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. That's what I thought.
It changes absolutely nothing because even if everything outside of my head is just a projection, I still have to interact with it. I still have to eat to survive. I still have to go through the exact same motions every day. So to me, the answer to solipsism is always going to be a matter of pragmatism. It changes nothing in my life if it's true.
Godless Iwan says that Ocean and Cirrus may be smug bastards, but they sure are sweet sometimes. I told him that we love your smug ass too.
You know, it's funny because he said Smuff.
I don't know what Smuff is.
And considering the weird shit that I've seen in the fan art section of my Discord lately, I'm inclined to believe that Smuff means other things.
Oh dear.
We've seen some weird stuff.
Don't talk about it.
I'm
gonna throw another grenade into the chat. Guess who's back on Twitter?
Who?
Master Apologist.
He's on his 5th strike.
He's now Supreme Apologist, and this isn't even his final form.
God damn it! It's funny because I just watched the Broly movie, the new one.
So he says Smurf equals Smurf fuckers. Great.
There was only we're gonna have to share then because I'm cis and white and like very very straight, and there was only one female in that entire fucking village. Did I break you, Ocean?
I'm broken. I'm gonna talk about Supreme Apologist. So he's run from a debate from you, right?
Yes.
He's run from 2 debates with me and Godless Cranium. And I think another one from Godless Cranium. He's run from a debate with Shannon Q. Is there anybody else?
Well, he said he's won 400 debates, so I can only assume he's ran from 400. So,
okay. So
I know that he at least
can't name anybody else.
I know that he at least did engage with Skylar Fiction.
I cannot figure out how to use my PayPal for the GoFundMe.
Yes.
Huh.
There's
Please
a
pass this
hold
on to our
on.
Iowans car fund. Folded
Okay.
hands, please, and thankies. Smiling
He just
face
challenged
with hard
Callan.
eyes.
That's right.
Yep.
So okay,
hold on. Chris,
he is on a challenging people to a debate spree right
yes,
now.
he is.
He has challenged me. I turned him down. He's challenged Christopher from Non Sequitur Show. He's been on there a few times. His name is Biblical History Skeptics.
Yes, that's Chris.
Yeah,
He's a really fucking smart guy.
Really smart dude. Chris turned him down. He challenged Shannon. Shannon turned him down. Challenged Russ. Russ is taking him up on it. Taking him up on a 2v2.
That's because Russ will take
in-
anybody. Russ will take anybody on
Right.
in a debate. He just enjoys that.
Russ is doing a 2v2 with Godless Aussie with him.
That'll be interesting.
He's challenging Callan, who's another polytheist.
I'm familiar with Callan.
Callan's cool people, and I don't know if Callan's accepting. I would advise Callan not to accept until he's shown up for a couple of things because he has a reputation of wasting people's time.
Not to mention, we also went through the whole reason why he does the debate structure with Andrew is because he's the guy who throws in the monkey wrench.
Right. Yeah. Here's the strategy when it comes to Master Appellant. This is what I think happens, because he did a debate with Duke Bonanza and Red Venture. What is Red's secondary name?
Well, Red's rhetoric. Hold on.
Red Venture. Yeah.
Yeah, Red Venture.
Red Venture. It was Red Venture and Duke Bonanza, and they did a debate with Josh and Andrew Stratali, whatever the fuck is it? Saint Head.
Andrew Strata Fuckface. There you go.
Whatever you want to call him, Stratosphere. So Andrew Stratosphere, what he does is he goes into the debate and he has like these well-reasoned arguments, and Master Apologist, Supreme Apologist, Vegeta is he's the burning pig in the conversation. And burning pig is a reference to Alexander the Great's strategy of setting pigs on fire and sending them towards elephants in order to distract them and make them go crazy. So he's the burning pig, where he sets himself on fire and squeals and makes all of these random things. It winds up, and everybody else has to try and cover them. Whereas Andrew is staying focused and doing the frontal assault.
It's like a Gish Gallop, except everything's on fire.
Yeah, and or it's not even a Gish Gallop, because I'm not sure if there's any arguments in it. It just seems to be like a lot of assertions. There was a point with me and him interacting on Steve McRae's show where Steve and I both were trying to understand what his point was, and he kept saying it's subtler than that. And we were saying, so what's the, if you're not, and then he starts talking about, have you read these certain scholars and stuff like that. It doesn't matter whether or not we've read these certain scholars. You need to know what the point is.
This is the same issue you have with people who say that you can't understand Jordan Peterson until you've read every single thing he's ever written. And it's like, if he can't articulate right now what he's saying, then he sucks ass at articulating his position. Period.
Yeah. It's there seems to be this, this guy is also kind of a Jordan Petersonite. He references Jordan Peterson a lot, and despite the fact that Jordan Peterson and he don't have the same image of God, but maybe they do. That would be an interesting thing to. I just had an epiphany.
If they have the same image of God, then how would he justify being a Christian?
Well, and he's a cultural Christian. Jordan Peterson promotes cultural Christianity.
Except he's not a cultural Christian, because I've personally had the conversation with him where he has said that he wants to lead people to Christ in the very real salvation sense. That's not a point of cultural Christianity. That's a point of religious Christianity.
True. That's true.
Usurped Lettuce says, I suck at articulating my position. I feel really attacked right now. It's fun.
Lettuce is awesome.
It's funny because of their blog. It's funny because of their blog.
Lettuce's blog is of Axe and Plow, who writes a lot about heathen topics. If you want to learn a little bit about heathenism, or heathenry rather, and jump into it from like way too over your head from the start, go to his blog. And he was actually one that I wound up meeting Lettuce like later on, and I didn't realize the guy who was writing that blog. And I had been reading his blog and even citing him a few times without knowing that I was actually talking to him. And then it was like, oh, you're okay, cool. And I figured that out, and it was Epiphany. And he got a big kick out of that. But anyway,
we're probably gonna only be on for about another
Plows
15 minutes. BT
cool.
dubs.
Point is, Vex and Plow is a good blog. But so for Master Apologist, which I'm not Supreme. I don't know. What do you want to call him? He doesn't like even calling his name anymore.
Let's call him Pizza Supreme.
Pizza Supreme. He's been challenging everybody to a debate. I'm not going to do it until he shows up for a few, and then maybe not even then. It's kind of shooting fish in a barrel at this point. But we will see what happens with that. And apparently, Singhetto points out that he's an Anglican.
Yes, I think that's a recent revelation, because he said that apparently he had conversations with Andrew and others, and that led him to be Anglican. Yeah, that was like literally a tweet from about a month ago.
Fun fact, you know RCA, right?
Yes.
Reformed Christian Apologist.
Oh yeah, me and him talk all the time.
He challenged Master Apologist to a debate, and he's turned it down.
But wait.
Yep.
Okay.
He says he doesn't want to debate other Christians.
So I've made a point to Master Apologist myself, because I do correspond with him over DMs once in a while. And the point I made to him, he wants to lead people to Christ. That's what he's said is what he wants to do. Okay. Point I made to him was that I think doing it through debate the way you're trying to do and the way that you act on Twitter is not going to accomplish that. My point to him,
he's dropping bombs everywhere.
Yeah, my point to him was that if you want to actually lead people to Christ, this is my point to any Christian at all. If you want to actually lead people to Christ and you want to lead them to Christianity, the best thing you can possibly do is be a responsible Christian, be an example of what you think the perfect person should be in the best capacity you can. Live that in your life, and then other people might want to follow your example if you are being that good person.
Right.
And I think that, at least for him, there's two reasons I said this. One, I think that's an honest and true answer. If you want somebody to find your position reasonable, the best thing you can be is be a reasonable person. Right. But it's also because I don't want him sitting there trying to fight people on Twitter, because there's no point to it. Like, it's hilarious to watch, but there's no fucking point to it.
Well, he's bad at it.
Yes. That's why I'm just like, dude, just stop, calm down. Like, I don't hate the guy. I just think he's arrogant and doesn't quite realize how arrogant he is, or doesn't quite realize how arrogant he sounds, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just like, dude, please stop doing this thing. It's very, very counterintuitive to what your goals are.
Yeah.
But
well, we'll see.
we'll see the end result of everything.
We'll see how it goes. What should we tackle next? We'll do another plug for Godless Iowans GoFundMe. Where are we at right now? As Godless Iowan said, someone sent him a PayPal as well for $15, so he's gotten $100 from the stream so far.
Yep, he's in his he's got $385 currently on the GoFundMe plus the 15 that was sent there. So yeah, 100 from our stream so far. Not as much as I would like, but also at the same time, it's anything helps, because
right.
Yeah, if you've ever been down a vehicle, every dollar towards fixing it is good. And Singhetto says, isn't he a history teacher? From what I understand, yes.
Yeah, apparently he teaches public school.
Which is because he even had a tweet at one point that said that everybody in the room, well, not just that, but he had a tweet at one point that said that everybody around him, like every other teacher around him, didn't take the claims of atheism seriously, and that was the one thing they all shared. And I'm just like, okay, so for one, that's argumentum ad populum. Like at the very best, yeah, it's argumentum ad populum with a very bad sample size. And as somebody who's been to a Christian school, I can tell you that if I did a sample size of that whole school and said I interviewed 5,000 people, and they all agreed that God is real. Just be like, well, that's cool, but your sample size was a Christian fucking private school.
Right. This guy.
Yep. Hopefully this whole conundrum ends up having a happy ending. But I've seen enough dumpster fires on the internet to know that
Dumpster spires.
dumpster spires.
I'm just imagining like this giant, stack of dumpsters that are all on fire.
I've learned that when it comes to
Dumpster
the internet, if I want to see a happy ending, the only thing I can really do is go to the massage section of Pornhub. That's about it. Did I break you again?
No. Cirrus, we're live.
Yes. Hey guys, guess what? You can find porn on the internet.
Oh no.
If you weren't aware, the internet has lots of this thing called pornography. He's just completely dead.
I'm done. I'm done.
I think that might be a good thing for us to end on.
Yeah, let's go ahead and end.
Let's go ahead and end on pornography.
Start with a bang and end with something.
Start with a bang and end with a limp. That's it.
It's a happy ending if there ever was one.
It is. Mrs. Snarky just says, "There's porn here."
Sometimes it's even on. Oh.
So, God damn it. Kadema just said, what is the ship name? There is no ship name. Stop, please. Don't. There is not one. We're done. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming out. The guys who have been able to donate to the Godless Iowans fundraiser to get the vehicle and everything set up, thank you very much for doing that so far. Godless Iowan just said, then if you watch porn, you can wank it to Cirrus. I disagree. Now that I've said that, I'm scared. You just
Oh boy.
you were just looking in the chat to make sure that was in fact said. No, that was said.
It's all over the place.
So after this, I guess we'll just contact Iowan real quick to let him know what the possible plans are, and let's we're gonna hop out of here.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
See you.